Good evening, Lou Hamilton from Audible Elegance here in Cincinnati, Ohio. And we are located on Montgomery Road, just a few doors north of the Montgomery Inn, and right across the street from Montgomery Cyclery. If you're enjoying our YouTube videos, please look at the catalog. There's now 82 of them out there for you to enjoy. And we do work on X and on Instagram. We have a Facebook page as well. And I write a blog occasionally. Tonight I want to talk about the devil in a box. This little guy is probably the most terrorizing piece to any new music student. And the reason being is it starts to lay out the fundamental of music, which is rhythm. And if you don't think rhythm is important, then I invite you to go to as many weddings as you can and enjoy their bands at their receptions, because I don't know of anybody who wants to have a recording of a wedding reception band played in their house. And they're a fine example of where volume or pitch or more bass, less bass is not satisfying at all. As a matter of fact, most times you're happy to leave the wedding reception because your ears have been beaten to a pulp by high volume and poor musical performance. That's kind of a sad commentary. But this little guy and what it does is it makes you perform as you're practicing to what's written on the piece of sheet music. And if you pull a ruler out and you grab a piece of sheet music, you'll discover that no matter how many sections there are, I like using choral music to show this because you have soprano, altos, tenors, and basses. The notes line up vertically, and that's because they're in time. And I talk about this because I'm also keenly aware of the trials and tribulations of the recording industry. People, if you want to have some fun, look up how many hours it took of continuous recordings by the Beach Boys to record Good Vibrations. And last I recall, it was like 24 hours where they could get it right. Now, we're not only talking about the performers doing it together in time, but at that time, people had to use reel-to-reels. So they were rocking them back and forth and trying to get them so that everything would sync up. And so there was a lot of work in the recordings of that era, unless you could call off and get a good first take. Today's world of digital makes it so much easier for the recording engineers because they can electronically control it. And what a lot of people don't understand is that a lot of the recordings of rock are not done with the whole band on stage and they're being very careful about where to place the microphones and so they can get this image and all this crap. No, they typically will record the drummer or the bass first, and then the next performer comes up with the group. It could be the lead guitar, it could be the vocalist. They put on headphones and they sing to what has been recorded. They get themselves in time. So you might, depending upon how many members in a band you might have 4 or 5 distinct recordings or tracks that are then blended together. And the creation of the stereo image is really a fiction of the recording engineer because it never existed in reality. So that's why when I'm listening to a system, I don't first go to spatial effects because it's a non-verifiable. I don't know what they did. And a lot of recording studios for years would use something like the Yamaha NS10 monitors with gauze taped over the tweeters. And that's what they were using to monitor what they were recording. So, I'm sorry, but, we should get stereo. Yes, we should have an effect. Yes. What version of that is right, we don't know. What we do know is this little demon that was probably in most of the musicians' lives as they started out, the concept of timing, was core. This is what we refer to as rhythm. And you should be able to listen to any system. And as the Lynn folks today, simply tap your foot. You should be able to get yourself in time with what you're listening to. If you don't believe me, then go ahead and watch videos of rock concerts, and you'll see a gazillion speakers up on stage. But if you carefully look at all of those speakers up on stage, about 3/4 of them are pointed to the musician so that they can hear what somebody else is doing, because they want to be in time with what they're doing. Some people, when they go to the live concerts, and I think it's a great idea that you do that, are disappointed that the performance they heard in a live concert isn't like what they heard on a recording. And that's because what happens in a recording is they do everything they can, particularly in this world of digital now, to get them perfectly in time. But when they're playing live, they can be tired. They've been on the road for 6 months. They may have had a bad lunch. It can be a number of different things. And they're not as synchronized because what they managed to do in a recording studio for a 3-minute song may have taken them a week and a half to get right. And so when you hear a recording of a great band, trust me, they should be rhythmically right. Everybody's done everything they can to get it there. And so I often find systems that could be $500, they could be $50,000. I took my wife to shows. She heard $500,000 systems. We'd leave the room and she would look at me and say, why would I want to buy that? I can already get that at Walmart. In terms of musical rhythm, she was absolutely correct. Now, it may have had all these other endearing qualities, but it's the lack of rhythm that will drive you nuts the first. And it's really the basis for listening fatigue. Another good example for you to experience terror is simply try to listen to music on your car stereo system. Most people, after a few hours of driving, start fiddling with the bass and the treble, or they change radio stations, trying to find music they can stand listening to. Well, it's not the music, it's the delivery system. So if one tried to tap one's foot to the music, you can't get the singer starting his words at the time a drum is being hit or a guitar is being plucked or any number of instruments. It's all out of sync. And the poorer the system, the more furious your brain is trying to make it right. That's really one of the true sources of listening fatigue. One of my little specialties, as I do as a hobby for myself, is I will evaluate little Sirius radio head units. And trust me, they're not the same. Some of them are pretty good, and a lot of them are pretty bad. What's built into most cars are usually dreadful. But if you go back to your on-the-road experience listening to music, that's why you wind up on a talk show or a ball game, because it doesn't have the discadence that is driving you mad. And so, I don't know if anybody's ever gone over there and listened for 4 hours to the Weather Channel. I guess it happens, but, the point being is that it either has to be rhythmically right or it's simply wrong. And if you think about wedding reception bands and your radio and a lot of your personal experiences, you quickly determine that it's either of merit or it's not. This does not require audiophile ears. That is about the biggest can of rubbish I've experienced in 38 years, that unless you have trained ears, you can't tell a musical difference. Well, that's nonsense. It's I love the English word for it. It's rubbish. People can tell when they've heard a great band or when they've heard an average band. It's like street musicians. You go walking along and you look in their case and there's some money and you listen to them play. If they're so bad, the money in their case is probably out of pity. If they're mediocre, they've probably put money in them themselves, hoping that you'll add to it. And then there are other musicians that are so good, you just simply stop and listen to them for a while. And then you feel the obligation to give them money because they gave you the pleasure of a great performance. It's really that simple. So you should be able to walk into any system and listen to it. And if you can't tap your foot to the music, which is a physical way of understanding what's going on, help you, there's something wrong. Oh, by the way, in those rock videos, yeah, they're all tapping their foot or they're banging their hand on the side of their leg. Yeah, they're keeping time, and that's what it's all about.